17. Alia Vestal and Savannah Walker. A young woman named Maya Tremillo was viciously beaten by at least 2 other girls in 2022 after being lured to a park in Clifton, Texas. Alia Vestal, a woman who once considered herself Maya's best friend, allegedly asked Maya to return some shoes she'd borrowed. Maya thought it was an odd request, but came by with the footwear as promised. And as she approached Alia's car, a woman later identified as Savannah Walker rushed out of the vehicle and blindly attacked her. Maya tried walking away and was struck in the back of the head. As the suspects beat her, a third person filmed the fight and posted it on Snapchat. Footage of the brawl showed 2 girls pinning Maya to the ground and screaming at her. Someone found Maya in the park and took her to the hospital, where she was treated for a concussion, a sprained ankle, and multiple scratches. And in addition to her physical injuries, she was emotionally traumatized by the encounter. Maya's mother, Julie Cross, said that they'd called the police the night before to report Savannah Walker for threats and harassment, but they were told that there was nothing law enforcement could do to help because there wasn't enough evidence of a crime to act on the complaint. And surprise, surprise, the rivalry reportedly began over a boy and escalated from there. Alia and Savannah were charged with felony aggravated assault in retaliation, which can carry a sentence of up to 5 years if convicted. But at the moment, the current status and outcome of the case are unclear. 16. Logan Larimore and Farron Lane. It should be common sense that if you're going to commit a crime, you shouldn't record it and you definitely shouldn't post it online. But 2 18-year-old women named Logan Larimore and Farron Lane apparently missed that memo when they decided to film themselves trespassing into a Myrtle Beach water park in 2017. In a series of Snapchat posts, the pair shared video of themselves scaling a fence to get into the Myrtle Waves water park at 4 a.m. They shared clips of themselves going down water slides, eating Italian ice they didn't pay for, and otherwise enjoying their illegal visit to the park without an apparent care in the world. However, someone shared the videos with the police, who quickly caught up with the gal pals and took them into custody on third-degree burglary charges. Larimore and Lane weren't the first people to bust themselves for trespassing because they shared evidence of it on social media. In fact, it seems to happen alarmingly often and was even the focus of a TikTok challenge, daring people to walk into complete strangers' houses without knocking. This is extremely dangerous for obvious reasons, especially in US states with gun laws that allow homeowners to shoot intruders without legal consequences. Guns or no guns, you never know how crazy someone might be or how far they're willing to go to defend their home against someone they perceive as a threat. TikTok took swift action to remove videos that appeared to show individuals participating in the challenge, but people continue to do it anyway. And it blew up on Reddit, mostly for the sake of making fun of people who were dumb enough to participate. 15. Victoria Waldrip. Better known by her social media moniker, Whoa Vicky, teenage social media influencer Victoria Waldrip didn't get famous by being likable. In fact, the 23-year-old thrives on drama and controversy. But it works for some people, especially those who aren't picky about what kind of attention they receive. Whoa Vicky became an internet celebrity in 2017 when she got into a viral beef with Danielle Bregoli, otherwise known as Bad Baby, and most infamously known as the Cash Me Outside girl who challenged Dr. Phil to a fight on national television. As the world looked on and collectively rolled their eyes, the young women exchanged vicious rap disses toward one another. Their rivalry eventually petered out, but they've both remained popular on social media ever since. While guest starring on the We in Miami podcast in 2023, Whoa Vicky stirred the pot once again by accusing rapper Lil Nas X of pretending to be gay as a publicity move to expand his fan base. She went on to say that some of her friends knew the musician in high school and that he wasn't gay back then, and that she thinks he needs Jesus. Vicky further speculated that Lil Nas X is simply doing what's in at the moment to boost his popularity. Many people were understandably offended by the influencer's remarks, but Lil Nas X didn't pay much mind to Vicky's commentary, mostly because he realized it didn't deserve his energy. The fact that she accused someone of being fake and acting out of character to gain a following is almost laughable to some, especially those who remember Woah Vicky's bizarre controversy over her race. During the early days of her internet fame, she often presented herself as an African American woman in her posts and videos. Many people doubted that it was true, mainly because she looks white, but also because it seemed like she tried too hard to behave in ways that mimic African American stereotypes. Woah Vicky stood by her claim, however, insisting that her ancestry results showed she was a quarter black. And at one point she shared a screenshot of the alleged results, which only added to the confusion by showing a 44% African ancestry, rather than the 25% she mentioned. It's unclear whether the image reflected her real results, but she was classified as white on an arrest report that was released after she allegedly kicked a cop at a mall in Georgia. It was also no secret that as far as Vicky's parents knew, nobody in their family had African ancestry. For many, this was enough to definitively clear up any confusion about Woah Vicky's race. But the situation became even more bizarre when she posted a video stating that she didn't think she was black after all. More than anything, it sounds like the young woman was suffering from an identity crisis of sorts, or perhaps just doing what she does best and acting outrageous to generate reactions and views from her audience. 14. Isaiah Craig Fitzgerald. During the early days of social media, society was shocked whenever an online rivalry spilled over into real-life violence. But today, it's nothing shocking because it happens all the time. And in all honesty, the pettiness that comes along with deadly social media feuds only seems to be reaching disturbing new heights with time. In 2023, a war of words erupted between teens in rural Missouri when 18-year-old Isaiah Craig Fitzgerald reacted to a photo of 20-year-old Tanner Watkins and his girlfriend with the laughing emoji. In the comments, Watkins asked, "What was so funny?" Then the situation quickly escalated into challenges between the parties to resolve the matter by fighting. The men agreed to settle the score at a local park. Fitzgerald brought along a female friend, while Watkins showed up with 18-year-old Caleb Ramsey. 2 carloads of people also arrived to watch the violent display, one in support of each side. But instead of duking it out in an old-fashioned fistfight, guns were involved and shots were fired from both vehicles. Fitzgerald was fatally struck in the face and several other people were injured, including the young woman he went to the park with, who was rushed to the hospital in critical condition. According to court documents, police swiftly responded to the sound of gunfire, and at the scene they found multiple guns. Ramsey and Watkins were charged with murder, 3 counts of assault, 4 counts of unlawful use of a weapon, and armed criminal action. But the outcome of their cases has yet to be decided. 13. Raymond Jalissant. When an off-duty New York City corrections officer named Dion Middleton felt something unusual hit his back while outside in the Bronx one morning in 2022, he reacted by pulling his gun and fatally shooting 18-year-old Raymond Jalissant. Middleton, who was 45 years old at the time of the incident, would later claim that he genuinely believed his life was in danger. He thought he was being struck by what felt like shards of glass and saw Jalissant sitting in the passenger seat of a nearby car. He explained that he thought he saw the teen making a threatening hand gesture before rolling up the car window, at which point he made the decision to shoot. By the time the police arrived, Middleton had fled the scene, and Jalissant was soon pronounced dead at a nearby hospital. Officers then tracked Middleton down at his job through surveillance footage and brought him in for questioning hours after the shooting. Inside the car Jalissant was riding in when he was shot, officers found a toy gun called a bead blaster, which was made for firing harmless gel pellets that are made from water. Being hit with the pellets might surprise someone, but it's not supposed to be painful like Middleton described, and he admitted he didn't hear gunshots before he decided to pull the trigger. News sources reported conflicting accounts of whether or not Middleton saw the toy gun in Jalissant's hands, but according to the New York Times, he admitted that he didn't see a weapon. bead blasters are children's toys, but were being used by a lot of older teens and young adults at the time due to a TikTok trend that involved challenging people to shoot the beads at strangers. Some media outlets speculated that Chalusson was participating in the challenge when Middleton shot him. But the young man's sister, Gerida Esquian, told the New York Daily News that her brother was participating in a water gun fight to catch a break from the heat on a 90-degree summer day. And as a result of his needless actions, Middleton was suspended from his job without pay and charged with second-degree murder, first and second-degree manslaughter, and criminal possession of a weapon. If convicted of the most serious charge, he could face life in prison. But to this day, he maintains that he acted in self-defense. 12. Brandon Clark. Bianca Devins and Brandon Clark met on Instagram in 2019. They were intimate at times, but Devins didn't want a serious relationship with Clark and ultimately decided that she only wanted to be friends. But Clark secretly remained hopeful that Devins would start wanting more, even though she'd been perfectly clear about her wishes. Meanwhile, Devins hoped that Clark understood that she wasn't going to change her mind. 3 months after meeting, they attended a concert together in New York City, where they met up with a mutual friend named Alex. During the drive back to Utica, where Devins and Clark both lived, they got into an argument. Clark had seen Devins kissing Alex and was in a jealous rage. And at some point during the disagreement, Clark lost all self-control and brutally assaulted Devins with a knife. He cut her neck so badly that he nearly decapitated her and posted a photo of her mutilated body on Discord. In the caption, he made a reference to a practice called orbiting, which more or less translates to following someone obsessively online, sometimes to the point of stalking. After killing the young woman, Clark built a bonfire near his vehicle and listened to a depressing song repeatedly. He then placed numerous calls to family members to say farewell, prompting them to worry and dial 911. Discord users who saw his gruesome post also contacted authorities, and Clark eventually called the police on himself. And that's when he was arrested for second-degree murder. Sadly, the online post showing Devins' murdered body generated widespread praise for Clark from the Incel community. The self-identifying term, which is short for involuntarily celibate, is used by men who typically struggle to land dates and find relationships, and who deeply hate women, especially those who they perceive as out of their league. Armed with an extreme and unwarranted sense of entitlement, this extreme version of toxic masculinity promotes the belief that women deserve to be punished for not giving an incel what he feels is owed, regardless of whether she wants it or not. Devins' family has had to fight continuously to get the horrifying images removed from websites and social media, forcing them to relive the trauma of her murder over and over, while misogynistic trolls ensure that the photos continue to circulate. Their experience sparked campaigns for Bianca's Law, which would require large social media platforms to take more responsibility for removing violent content from their site. And in 2022, New York Governor Kathy Hochul signed a version of the law that criminalizes posting, sharing, or publishing personal images with the intent to degrade or abuse someone under certain circumstances. After initially pleading not guilty, Brandon Clark changed his plea to guilty. He then tried to withdraw the guilty plea, but was denied since he'd already admitted to the crime. And in the end, the court sentenced him to 25 years to life in prison. 11. Chandler Halderson. Bart and Krista Halderson enjoyed a typical upper-middle-class lifestyle in small-town America. They owned a nice house in Windsor, Wisconsin, and had 2 adult sons who seemed to be on the path to success. The couple didn't achieve their stable existence by being unreliable, so it was highly unusual when Krista failed to show up at her job one day in 2021 without explanation. And after failing to reach her by phone, a co-worker stopped by the family's residence to check on her. The Haldersons' youngest son, 23-year-old Chandler, told the concerned colleague that his parents had gone to their cabin that was 3 hours away for the 4th of July weekend. But 3 days later, Bart and Krista were still nowhere to be found. In a missing person report filed with the Dane County Sheriff's Department, Chandler claimed that his parents had been picked up and taken to the cabin by a couple he didn't recognize. But when law enforcement visited the cabin, it was immediately clear that nobody had been there for a very long time. Chandler was then brought in for additional questioning. Unaware that investigators had checked out the property, he claimed that his mom and dad went to the cabin to fix a plumbing emergency and that he helped pack tools they needed before they left. During the interview, deputies informed detectives that they had found mutilated human remains on a property where Chandler had been seen wandering prior to reporting his parents missing, and that's when Chandler realized that the deck was starting to stack against him. So he ended the interview and asked for a lawyer. The remains were identified as Bart Holderson, and Chandler was charged with murder while authorities continued to search for Krista. Help came unexpectedly in the form of a tip from Chandler's girlfriend Catherine Melander, who'd recently been tracking his location on Snapchat. She'd noticed that he was in a remote area along the Wisconsin River and screenshotted it. And sure enough, Krista's remains were found at the site, and Chandler was hit with another murder charge. During a search of the Holdersons' home, police also found the gun they believe was used to commit the murders, along with more than 200 bone fragments in the fireplace and evidence of blood that had been cleaned up. Prosecutors accused the young man of killing his parents because they found out that he'd flunked out of college. Chandler had gone to great lengths to convince his folks that he was still attending classes. He even sent them fake emails to make it look like he was still enrolled. He'd also lied about joining a police scuba diving team and other job prospects. During his trial, Assistant District Attorney Andrea Raymond described how Chandler enjoyed a privileged upbringing, which made it especially difficult to make sense of his actions. He also showed little to no emotion throughout the proceedings. After deliberating for just 2 hours, the jury found Chandler guilty of killing his parents. He was sentenced to life without parole, but said that he planned to appeal his conviction. During the hearing, he asked for any attorneys who were interested in taking his case to reach out. He also said that it's not that I do not have feelings, it's that I was warned to not show them in the scrutiny of this case. 10 deadly social media dares. Scores of young people have hurt themselves and even accidentally caused their own deaths in recent years while performing dangerous social media challenges. One of the latest ways people have needlessly put their lives on the line in a bid for online fame came in the form of the Malaikat Maut or Angel of Death challenge. The trend, which involved jumping in front of moving trucks in the hope that the driver would be able to brake without hitting the person, went viral in Indonesia in 2022. It doesn't take a big imagination to figure out how this went horribly wrong. In the city of Tangerang, 2 18-year-old women were mowed down by a truck that couldn't avoid hitting them, and they both died from fatal head injuries. Police then caught and detained at least 14 more people that day for attempting the stunt. Just 2 days earlier, in the city of Bandung, a truck hit one of 2 teenage boys who jumped out in front of it. But by the grace of God, the young man survived with serious injuries, including a fractured skull and shattered teeth. While this was the first time the trend was mentioned in many news sources, it first appeared on social media at least a year earlier. In one of the early tragedies that came with the challenge, a truck plowed into a group of 8 people in 2021, striking 3 of them. 1 teenager died, while the other 2 were seriously injured. These are just a few examples of the many bad outcomes resulting from clout chasers doing dangerous things to boost their popularity on social media. And these stunts are often successful at achieving viral status, making it difficult to talk young people out of taking potentially fatal risks. Just weeks before the Angel of Death challenge made international news in 2022, the death of an 18-year-old Florida man named Timothy Isaiah Hall, better known as Timbo the Redneck, died while filming a video for social media. With more than 200,000 followers, Hall had already achieved influencer status when he crashed his truck while doing donuts in a friend's front yard for a TikTok video. Hall lost control of the truck in the middle of doing burnouts, causing the vehicle to flip and throwing him out of the vehicle. He landed on the ground and the truck landed on top of him, ultimately crushing him to death. There's no denying that Hall's dangerous driving helped to attract the kind of fame many people hope to achieve, but he paid for it with his life. 9. Screen-addicted teen slaughters dad. 51-year-old Anuad Chaubangdwe was at his wit's end when he asked his son Pamwarat to take a break from playing video games one day in 2019. Ever since the teen was kicked out of school due to his chronic absences, he did nothing but sleep all day and spent every waking moment playing video games at the family's home in southern Thailand. But his lifestyle quickly became a major source of conflict for the household. Within moments of his father's request to put the controller down, Pamwarat grabbed a knife and stabbed Anuat in the back, and afterwards he fled the scene on his bicycle. Responding officers arrived at the home in Surat Thani to find the victim, a retired police sergeant, on the floor in a pool of blood. A trail of blood from the yard to the kitchen showed that the victim spent his final moments crawling inside in a desperate attempt to get help. Police tracked Pamwarat down at a restaurant, where they found him playing video games with a friend, and took him into custody on suspicion of murder. According to relatives, the young man's obsession caused him to skip school for days at a time, and getting expelled and having even more free time on his hands apparently only made the situation worse. Sadly, his unwillingness to step away from the TV screen for even just a few minutes and his impulsive anger toward his dad landed him in a place where basic comforts are scarce and video games are definitely not allowed. 8. Kiara McCulley. In a horrifying act of violence that was equal parts bizarre and cruel, someone killed and tried to decapitate a 21-year-old woman named Grace Jennings at her home in Santa Fe, New Mexico in October 2022. Responding officers visited the residence in response to a call about a possible homicide and found Jennings' mutilated remains in a detached garage. And laying near her body was a bloody 3-foot-long sword. According to a criminal complaint, 25-year-old Isaac Apodancia made the 911 call after he told his mother that he saw his girlfriend killing a woman. And when officers arrived, they saw 19-year-old Kiara McCulley running inside the house and slamming the door shut behind her. Apodancia and McCulley were taken in for questioning and revealed that they'd shared a bed with the victim the night before. They also both claimed to have been romantically involved with Jennings in the past. McCulley told police that she got upset with Jennings for failing to intervene while she was assaulted by several men. She also said she saw Jennings collecting money during the incident. The Santa Fe Police Department confirmed to local media that an assault report was filed in 2020, but that the details it contained were vastly different from the story McCulley told after Jennings' murder. At one point during the interview, she mentioned having mental health issues and claimed not to remember what had happened. But she also allegedly said that she was partially hopeful that Jennings was dead and admitted to fantasizing about killing the victim on multiple occasions, which only furthered law enforcement's growing suspicion of her involvement. Meanwhile, in another interrogation room, Apodancia flatly denied any involvement in Jennings' death. Instead, he pointed the finger exclusively at McCulley, claiming that she'd been planning to kill the victim for 2 years. A search of his text messages strongly indicated that he was both aware of and involved in the plot to kill Jennings. It even appeared as though Apodancia pressured McCulley to follow through with the murder. Both suspects were charged with first-degree murder in connection with the case. However, McCulley was initially found incompetent to stand trial. But after undergoing several months of mental health treatment, she was declared competent. And at the moment, her case is slated to go to trial sometime in August of 2023, with Apodancia to be tried separately at a later date. 7. Maishawn Stanley. 21-year-old Amia Stanley and her brother, 22-year-old Maishawn, were hardly the first pair of siblings to fight over the family television. They were hanging out at a relative's home in Cleveland, Ohio one day in 2023 when they began arguing because Amia wanted to watch a show and Maishawn wanted to play Fortnite. What started out as a seemingly ordinary spat between siblings ended with Amia being shot more than 6 times. She was still alive when officers arrived at the scene, but sadly she died soon after. The siblings' aunt, Tasha Lett, told local station WCPO that Maishan has violent and aggressive tendencies and that he jumped on his sister and began wrestling with her during the disagreement. Lett said that Armchair initially got away from Maishan and was heading upstairs to get away from him, but she was unaware that he had a gun and she was shot from behind. After shooting Armchair once, Maishan allegedly fired 6 more bullets into her body before fleeing the house. Other relatives echoed the aunt's sentiments about Maishan having severe anger issues and said that he suffers from bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. They weren't surprised that he was capable of hurting someone, but they were shocked and devastated that his sister ended up being that person. A SWAT team arrested Maishan on suspicion of murder the day after the shooting, and at the moment he's being held on a $500,000 bond while he awaits his next court date. 6. A lethal thrill. Bored young people are sometimes known to pass the time in strange, destructive, and even deadly ways. And this was certainly the case for a trio of 18-year-olds from Colorado who killed an innocent driver during their reckless pursuit for a thrill. 20-year-old Alexa Bartel was talking to a friend on the phone while driving in Jefferson County one night in April 2023 when suddenly the call disconnected. Concerned for her safety, the friend tracked Alexa's location and drove to the scene. She found the young woman's vehicle crashed in a field with the windshield shattered and Alexa motionless behind the wheel with a fatal head injury. Law enforcement concluded that a large landscaping boulder had been deliberately thrown at her car and that it was the rock and not the impact of the car crash that killed the victim. The tragedy came following a string of similar incidents that happened throughout the night, leaving 7 cars damaged and 2 drivers with minor injuries. Further investigation revealed that rocks had been thrown at cars in the area on multiple previous occasions over a 2-month period leading up to Alexa's death. Using a technique called geofencing, detectives used cell phone data to look for phone numbers that showed a pattern of being in close proximity to the rock-throwing incidents. And based on their findings and tips from the public, they identified the suspects as Nicholas Mitch Carroll Chick, Joseph Koenig, and Zachary Quack. One tipster, who said that he'd been hanging out with the group earlier that night, said that Joseph Koenig frequently participates in destructive behavior and likes causing chaos. He told sheriff's deputies that he asked to be taken home when he saw his friends loading the bed of Koenig's truck with rocks from a Walmart parking lot because he just knew that something bad was going to happen. Koenig failed to talk with law enforcement after his arrest, but Carol Chick reportedly admitted to participating in similar behavior on at least 10 occasions. According to police, he said that all 3 of the suspects got excited when they hit cars. However, he and Quack gave conflicting stories about who threw the rock that killed Alexa. But after striking Alex's car, Quack snapped a photo of her vehicle as a memento. The young men each faced charges of first-degree murder, first-degree attempted murder, second-degree assault, and attempted second-degree assault. But we'll have to wait and see what sentence they receive. 5. Jose Diaz-Contreras. During the pre-dawn hours one morning in May 2023, Baltimore County Police responded to a reported shooting at a Motel 6 in Catonsville, Maryland. Guests would later tell local station WBAL-TV that they awoke to the sound of multiple gunshots. One witness went into the hallway to investigate and was startled to find 2 victims on the floor. 30-year-old Javier Argueta died at the scene, and 2 other victims aged 19 and 25 were taken to the hospital with none life-threatening injuries. Investigators initially declined to specify what they believe led up to the shooting, but they reassured the public that it was most likely an isolated incident and didn't appear to be a random act. According to charging documents obtained by WBAL, responding officers found 18-year-old Jose Diaz-Contreras wandering around in the motel parking lot. Surveillance footage appeared to show the young man pulling a handgun from beneath his coat and firing several rounds. Diaz-Contreras allegedly admitted to committing the shooting during questioning, telling investigators that he couldn't stop. He was booked on charges of first-degree murder and 2 counts of attempted murder, and is being held without bail as he awaits his next court date in June 2023. And unfortunately, authorities are still working to establish a motive for the senseless crime. 4. Cameron Robbins. After graduating from high school in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 2023, 18-year-old Cameron Robbins celebrated by traveling to the Bahamas with his classmates. During a sunset cruise, the star baseball player took his peers up on a dare to jump off the ship. Bystander footage showed someone throwing the young man a life preserver while his peers shouted at him to grab on. However, he seemed distracted by a shadowy shape in the water and appeared to be trying to swim away from it when he suddenly vanished beneath the surface. It was dark and the footage is blurry, but many people who have watched it believe it shows Robbins trying to escape from a shark. And this wouldn't be surprising, since the waters where he jumped in are known to be heavily shark-infested. The boat's crew members looked for Robbins but couldn't find him, so they called for help. Multiple agencies then participated in a search for the teen, including the US Coast Guard. But not a single trace of him turned up, and the effort was called off after a few days. Robbins was presumed dead, and authorities extended their condolences to his family. And without a body, the nature of his death remains unclear. It's hard to explain what possesses people to do things that are obviously dangerous in response to a dare or challenge. But in hindsight, many, if not most people, have done at least one or two things that seem incredibly reckless. 3. Madeline Davis. 21-year-old Madeline Davis wanted to see the world while she was still young. So, after visiting Thailand and Bali in 2019, the British beautician headed to Australia. She was having the time of her life with a group of friends when tragedy struck at the most unexpected moment. After pulling an all-nighter at a house party, Madeline and several others went to watch the sunrise over Diamond Bay in Sydney. Everyone got so caught up in taking photos that they somehow failed to notice when the young woman fell off a 262-foot-high cliff. When they finally realized Madeline was missing, they contacted authorities, who found her body wedged in a rock shelf 55 feet underwater. An autopsy revealed that her blood alcohol content was twice the legal limit for driving. She also had amphetamines, cocaine, ketamine, and MDMA in her system. Everyone in the group was heavily intoxicated, which explains why it took them so long to realize that Madeline was no longer with them. The coroner concluded that her death was the result of a tragic accident and that nobody else was at fault for it. And according to an official report, she climbed over a fence into an unauthorized area before she fell. Madeline wasn't the first person to suffer a horrific accident at the site, which is popular among tourists for its scenic beauty. Over the years, the fences and danger signs have gotten taller and bigger in hopes that more people will heed their caution. But visitors continue to ignore the warnings and, unfortunately, pay for it with their lives. 2. Katrina Lee. In a bizarre display that she later described as Gen Z humor, 20-year-old Katrina Lee allegedly threatened to shoot up a mental hospital in Green Bay, Wisconsin in January 2023. Employees at the hospital got police involved after someone alerted them to the threats, which appeared online and on Snapchat. According to police, Lee knew a patient at the facility. A screenshot of one of the alleged threats stated that there'd no longer be a hospital soon because she was about to shoot it up. The person who wrote the statement said that they'd failed to get in touch with the patient after calling multiple times and that the hospital had been pissing them off all morning. At the time the threats were made, police were unsure of whether the suspect had access to any weapons. So they tracked the post to Lee's address and paid her a visit. Lee reportedly admitted to making the threats, but said that she had no plans to act on her words. She further explained that she was at her wits' end with the hospital's poor communication and the inferior quality of the food and doctors there. During the conversation with law enforcement, Lee reiterated that she wasn't going to act on her threats and that it was just Gen Z humor, but she was nevertheless booked on one count of misdemeanor disorderly conduct and one felony count of making terroristic threats. If convicted of the felony charge, she could face up to 3.5 years in prison, while the disorderly conduct charge carries a sentence of up to 90 days in jail. 1. Alexander Barrow. nobody knows why 23-year-old Alexander Frank Barrow drove 1,700 miles to kill a young gamer he didn't personally know in 2020. He'd met 18-year-old Matthew Thane online, but no logical reason to travel from the greater San Francisco area to the Dallas-Fort Worth suburb of Flower Mound. There was also no obvious motive for Barrow to lure the avid Call of Duty player outside and shoot him. According to police, a helmet-clad Barrow approached the property with a propane tank at around 6 a.m. and lit it on fire. He waited for Thane to exit the house, fatally shot the young man, then got back into his vehicle and drove straight back to California. And in less than 72 hours after leaving for Texas, he was back home. When Barrow didn't answer the door for law enforcement when they showed up at his residence with a search warrant, police broke into his apartment and found him dead. Lacking any other explanation for the bizarre tragedy, investigators concluded that the incident may have stemmed from a video game-related disagreement. 14. Mahek Bukhari. In early 2022, a 22-year-old TikToker from Leicestershire, England named Mahek Bukhari made an arguably distasteful video about how her relationship with her mother was so close that they could confide in one another about killing people. Most people initially took it as a joke. After all, who in their right mind would post something like that and actually mean it? But the seemingly satirical clip took on a disturbing new tone just weeks later, when Mahek and her mother, 45-year-old Ansareen Bukhari, were charged with murder. According to prosecutors, Ansareen was entangled in a torrid on-and-off 3-year affair behind her husband's back, with a man less than half her age and even younger than her daughter. Authorities accused the Bukharis of purposefully running 21-year-old Saqib Hussain off the road in a bid to hide the illicit relationship and to prevent the victim from leaking some steamy videos of himself and Ansareen. Riding in the car with Hussain at the time of the accident was his childhood friend, Mohammed Hashim Ijazuddin. In a harrowing 911 call, Hussain said that the two people in the vehicle chasing after him were wearing balaclavas. He screamed, "Oh my God," and the call disconnected as the vehicle crashed, ripped in half, and burst into flames, killing both men. At trial, prosecutor Collingwood Thompson KC described the investigation's findings as a story of love, obsession, extortion, and ultimately cold-blooded murder. He said that Ansareen wanted to end the affair for good, but Hussain couldn't accept that it was over. The scorned young man allegedly threatened to tell Ansareen's husband and sons about the relationship and to show them the videos as proof. A WhatsApp conversation recovered by investigators revealed that Ansareen turned to her daughter for help. In one message, Mahek wrote that she would have some guys jump Hussain. In addition to Ansareen's alleged desire to hide the affair, Thompson also alleged that the women carried out the murder to protect Mahek's reputation on TikTok, where she went by the handle May B Vlogs and had upwards of 128,000 followers. The prosecutor accused the mother-daughter duo of telling the police a pack of lies in an attempt to cover up their involvement in the crime. Thompson even said that Mahek thought her skills as a social media influencer would somehow enable her to sell a false story. As of May 2023, the Bukharis and 6 other defendants remain on trial, with each suspect facing 2 counts of murder. 13. Zachary Latham. 18-year-old Zachary Latham became TikTok famous for his love of cars. It was the same passion that caused his neighbor, Catherine Tiffany Durham, to approach him outside their Vinland, New Jersey homes one day in 2020 and scold him for driving too fast down their street. During the heated exchange, Durham demanded that the young man slow down behind the wheel. Latham captured the interaction on video and posted it online, referring to his neighbor as a Karen. The clip went viral, garnering over 3 million views in just a few days' time and helping Latham gain over 40,000 new followers. Meanwhile, the neighborly dispute escalated. Durham's husband, William Timmy Sr., and the couple's two sons got involved, but Latham showed no signs of backing down as he continued to ridicule the family on social media. In one video, he accused Durham's son of aggressively confronting him, mockingly stating that Karen's son had tried pulling him out of his car. Of course, the allegations went both ways. About a month after the initial confrontation between Latham and Tiffany Durham, the Durhams accused Latham of trying to run one of their sons off the road. The family called the police, and Tiffany told responding officers that Latham gave her a black eye, which the young man denied. No arrests were made and law enforcement left the scene. The feud reached a tragic tipping point later that day when the Durhams confronted Latham at his house. Latham answered the door armed with a stun gun and a knife, while his wife, Sarahi, recorded the encounter. A loud fight broke out, prompting several neighbors to dial 911. The incident ended with Latham fatally stabbing Timmy Sr. In a panicked 911 call, Latham said he'd just been assaulted. He admitted to the stabbing, later telling detectives that he felt he was the victim of a mob attack, despite the Durhams being unarmed. Latham was charged with manslaughter. To prevent him from continuing to broadcast the situation on TikTok and to the media, the judge overseeing the case imposed a gag order, banning him from commenting on the case. Throughout his trial, Latham maintained that he acted in self-defense. The jury agreed, and he was acquitted of the whole charge. While Latham managed to avoid the worst possible outcome, which would have included prison time and a damaging criminal record, he still had to cope with the fallout of going public with his dispute and the massive amount of media attention the case attracted. He also has to live with knowing he killed someone, which is a painful reality for most people to come to grips with, even in cases that are deemed justified. 12. Ashley Giard. With every headline-making crime comes a slew of people who think they have it solved before all the facts are even available. The quadruple murder of 4 college students in Moscow, Idaho in late 2022 was no exception. Zana Knodel, her boyfriend Ethan Chapin, and Knodel's roommates Madison Mogan and Kaylee Goncalves were viciously stabbed to death during the early morning hours of November 13th as they slept in their beds at the off-campus house they all shared. As weeks went by without any arrests, members of the public tried to get to the bottom of the case. And while many people came up with perfectly logical theories, others completely missed the mark. Included among the armchair detectives who mistakenly thought they were one step ahead of law enforcement was a TikToker and self-proclaimed psychic named Ashley Giard, who posts videos under the username Ashley Solves Mysteries. The tarot card reader from Texas pinned the murders on Rebecca Schofield, an associate professor and chair of the University of Idaho's history department. According to Giard, Schofield had a romantic connection with Casey Goncalves and ordered the murders in a bizarre revenge scheme. While many of the details of the investigation are being kept under wraps, there's not even been a hint of authorities suspecting Schofield in the case, let alone the TikToker's theory being based on tangible evidence or sound logic. Giard doesn't know Schofield personally, and her reasoning behind why she thinks the professor is the killer is shaky at best, but she was confident enough in her opinion to share it with the world. And it backfired when she was slapped with a defamation lawsuit. Schofield, who was ruled out as a suspect early on in the investigation, accused Giard of spreading harmful and false statements about her alleged connection to the murders. In the lawsuit, she said that she'd never even met the victims. She claimed that Giard's accusations had caused her to suffer significant emotional damage and fear for her life, as well as the safety of her loved ones. The professor requested an unspecified amount of damages, including compensation for the security system she'd installed at her home, as well as a reimbursement for court costs. News of the court case broke just days before authorities arrested former criminology PhD student Brian Koberger as the prime suspect in the case. The court granted Schofield's motion for a default judgment in her favor in early 2023 after Giard failed to formally respond to the lawsuit. Giard has since countersued, accusing Schofield of ruining her reputation and claiming that she made the statements against Schofield out of a well-intentioned concern for public safety. 11. Matthew Price. Thanks to social media, more everyday people are becoming celebrities than ever before, and they're doing it largely through their own talent and ingenuity. A 27-year-old magician and comedian from Los Angeles named Matthew Price was among the countless individuals who tried to take advantage of what seemed like a more level playing field in the widespread pursuit for fame. Price left Fort Myers, Florida for LA in 2016, hoping to make it big with his gift for entertaining and making people laugh. To supplement his live work, he began to promote himself on TikTok, and it certainly helped to get him noticed. The ambitious jokester gained a following of more than 145,000 fans through his videos, which came in especially handy when the COVID-19 pandemic put an indefinite end to live performances. It's hard to make it in the cutthroat and competitive world of showbiz, especially while working to keep up with LA's infamously high cost of living. At one point, Price's mum, Danuta Ritchie, encouraged him to take a break and return to Florida. Ritchie later told the Fort Myers-based news press that her son had no such plans, and that he made it clear that he would stop at nothing to achieve the fame and fortune he'd dreamed of since childhood. He had no way of knowing that just days before Thanksgiving in 2021, someone would rob and kill him in the street during a routine snack run to a convenience store near his apartment. Surveillance footage captured the moment Price collapsed after being shot in the leg. He was rushed to a nearby hospital where doctors tried to save his life, but he bled to death from his injuries. There was a festival going on nearby, and the area where Price was killed is reportedly known as gang territory. But he wasn't known to be involved in any gangs, and his only offense that night was to innocently walk to a store for a bite to eat. Sadly, the killer remains at large. The Los Angeles Police Department is offering a $50,000 reward for information leading to the suspect, who investigators believe lives in the area where the crime occurred. 10. Anthony Barajas. Hailing from the greater Los Angeles area, TikTok star Anthony Barajas accumulated a following of nearly 1 million fans with his lip-sync videos, humorous skits, and thoughts about relationships and heartache. The social media community was shocked when the 19-year-old and his friend, 18-year-old Riley Goodrich, were ruthlessly gunned down at a movie theater one evening in July of 2021. In what can only be described as a real-life horror scene, the pair were shot execution-style while watching the horror film The Forever Purge at a theater in Corona and Riverside County. An employee found Goodrich and Barajas in their seats after the movie. Goodrich was pronounced dead at the scene, and Barajas died in a hospital several days later. Authorities quickly zeroed in on a 20-year-old man named Joseph Jimenez as their prime suspect, but they were hard-pressed to identify a motive. According to investigators, Jimenez and the victims didn't know each other. Detectives eventually concluded that Barajas' social media fame most likely didn't play a role in the shooting. Despite the lack of a clear reason for the double murder, they had enough evidence to arrest Jimenez, so they booked him into custody on 2 counts of first-degree murder and various other charges. He pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Details of the shooting have slowly come to light throughout the suspect's court proceedings. During a preliminary hearing in 2022, several friends of Jimenez who were at the theater on the night of the murders testified that he was acting strangely. A witness named Julian Velasquez told the court that Jimenez was staring blankly and muttering to himself after their group arrived at the theater, and that his behavior became even more bizarre throughout the film. Velasquez described how Jimenez was allegedly glaring at his friends, like he wanted to punch them in the face and for no apparent reason. During the movie, Jimenez reportedly left and returned with a backpack. Fearing he had a gun, another friend named Ramon Fellis took the backpack away. Fellis took the stand during the hearing and said that he wouldn't have returned the bag to Jimenez, and he would have alerted authorities if he had any idea that the defendant was seriously planning to shoot anyone. At some point before the show ended, Fellis and Velasquez became so disturbed by their friend's behavior that they snuck out of the theater, leaving him behind. They later saw Jimenez run out of the theater and speed off in his car. The court case and investigation are ongoing. 9. Sanya Khan. One of TikTok's biggest selling points is its abundance of raw, first-hand stories from people who find the strength to share their most painful and personal experiences with the world. One such individual was Sanya Khan, a first-generation American who was born in 1993 to parents who came to the United States from Pakistan. In 2021, she married her boyfriend of 5 years, Raheel Ahmad. The couple moved from Sanya's hometown of Chattanooga, Tennessee to Chicago, where she worked as a photographer. What was supposed to be the beginning of a long life together quickly turned into turmoil. After the wedding, Ahmad allegedly began displaying major signs of mental instability. Sanya remained quiet about the couple's worsening problems as she tried to make her troubled marriage work. Her close friend, Brianna Williams, later told the BBC that some of Sanya's friends encouraged her to leave Ahmad, while others urged her to try making the marriage work. She filed for divorce 6 months after her wedding in December 2021, following a particularly scary incident that caused her to seriously fear for her safety. It was a tough decision for Sanya, who was raised in a conservative culture that deeply frowns upon divorce. Knowing that other women from her background likely experienced similar feelings of failure, shame, and isolation, she bravely shared her story on TikTok. Sanya quickly amassed tens of thousands of followers as she discussed the reasons why she left her marriage, including her husband's abusive behavior and his alleged refusal to get mental help. She described feeling like Ahmad's problems became hers and hers alone to deal with, while grappling with the worrisome prospect of leaving him and being subjected to the stigma that divorced women in her culture often face. After filing for divorce, Sanya changed her locks and got a restraining order against Ahmad. Meanwhile, she continued telling her story, often venting about how she felt like a black sheep of her community. In one post, she said that some relatives told her that she let the devil win by ending her marriage. They allegedly made other cruel statements, including allegations that Sanya dressed like a prostitute, and they made it clear they wanted her to stay away from her hometown after she separated from her husband. On the afternoon of July 18, 2022, 7 months after Sanya filed for divorce, Ahmad's family reported him missing from the Atlanta area, where he'd moved during the separation. At the request of authorities in Georgia, Chicago police conducted a welfare check at Sanya's residence, where they found the young woman and her estranged husband dead from gunshot wounds. Ahmad had gained access to the building by setting up an appointment to tour apartments with a realtor. He'd previously been banned from the building, but security didn't check his ID that day. After viewing a few units, he told the realtor that he was going to meet up with some friends who lived in the building, and they went their separate ways. Sanya's death sparked larger ongoing discussions about the topic of divorce and the relationship between its taboo nature and the potentially life-endangering gender violence in the South Asian community. Her family declined to comment on her death, and leftover money from a crowdfunding campaign for funeral expenses was returned to donors after plans to donate it to anti-domestic violence organizations were met with conflict. 8. Rory Teasley. As a born entertainer, 28-year-old Rory Teasley was loved among his more than 200,000 TikTok followers for his easygoing, naturally likable personality and jovial sense of humor. In early 2022, the Michigan-based content creator posted a light-hearted video about getting older. Just days later, in a cruel twist of irony, he was fatally assaulted at his home in Pontiac. Police responded to the scene after receiving a 911 call from Teasley's boyfriend of 10 years, Jovo Watkins, who told the dispatcher that the couple had gotten into an altercation. Watkins reportedly told officers that Teasley was sleeping on the living room sofa, only for them to quickly discover that he was unresponsive and not breathing. It was unfortunately too late to save his life. According to an arrest report, Teasley and Watkins got into an argument while playing the video game Overwatch. The disagreement became physical, and Watkins choked Teasley to death. In a statement, Sheriff Michael Bouchard expressed his dismay at what he described as a nationwide trend of people resorting to violence over trivial and insignificant disagreements, which in Teasley and Watkins' cases claimed the life of one man and ruined the life of another. Watkins was charged with second-degree murder and held without bond while the case played out in court. He pleaded no contest to the charge in early 2023, right before he was scheduled to go to trial. Under Michigan law, a no-contest plea is not an admission of guilt, but it's treated like one when it comes to imposing a criminal sentence. A second-degree murder conviction can carry a term of up to life in prison, but can also come with a shorter term and the possibility of parole. According to jail records, Watkins is currently being held in Oakland County lockup, where he appears to be awaiting sentencing. 7. Ali Abulaban. From the outside looking in, Ali Nasser Abulaban and his wife Anna were living the American dream. Based on the image they put out to the world, they were a young, successful couple and doting parents to their young child, living happily together in a San Diego luxury high-rise. The pair were both very active on social media and could each be considered an influencer in their own right. But Ali was especially popular for his comedy skits, which earned him a TikTok following of over 1 million fans. He and Anna often feature one another in their videos, further bolstering their image of a picture-perfect, drama-free marriage and family life. But things were far less peachy behind closed doors. Friends of the couple would later say that Ali's fame became a bone of contention in the relationship, with Anna often suspecting him of cheating and growing increasingly jealous of the attention her husband received from female fans. Tensions between the pair soon gave way to physical violence, resulting in 9 police responses to their 35th floor condo over a 3-month period in 2021. After the string of domestic incidents, Ali moved out at Anna's request and checked into a hotel. Anna reportedly planned to ask for a restraining order against Ali and file for divorce, but she never got the opportunity to follow through with her intentions. Just 3 days after leaving the home, Ali allegedly returned, trashed the place, installed a listening device on his daughter's tablet, and left again. Just hours later, someone entered the condo and shot Anna in the head at point-blank range before firing multiple bullets into her friend, Rayburn Cadernas Barron. According to law enforcement, Ali confessed to killing the victims in a conversation with his mother. He was also reportedly seen leaving the condo on surveillance footage right around the time of the murders. Just hours after the deadly shooting, Ali was booked into jail on 2 counts of first-degree murder. He pleaded not guilty and is being held without bail while awaiting trial, which was scheduled for May 2023 but appears to be delayed. In a bizarre jailhouse interview with Fox 5 shortly after the double murder, Ali said he heard Barron's voice while listening in on the bug he installed. In his words, he freaked out and rushed over to the condo, praying desperately that he wouldn't find Anna hooking up with another man. Prosecutors believed that Barron and Anna were just friends, but that Barron's mere presence in the home was enough to tip Ali over the edge into a murderous rage. Of course, regardless of the nature of the victim's relationship, killing is never the answer. The outcome of the case remains to be seen. 6. Matima Miller. Better known by his TikTok names Swavy and Babyface S, 19-year-old Matima Miller was a talented dancer with nearly 3 million followers. But he never got to see how far his talent would take him because he was shot dead in broad daylight outside his home in Wilmington, Delaware one morning in July of 2021. His mother witnessed his excruciating final moments. Just 2 days after the murder, as law enforcement worked to identify a suspect, controversial talk show host Wendy Williams announced Swavy's death during the Hot Topics segment of her talk show. She peppered the news with an array of bizarre and arguably insensitive comments that left viewers both shocked and appalled. When the teen's picture appeared on the screen, Williams said, "I have no idea who this person is, neither does one person in the building." She then described Swavy as a TikTok star with more followers than her. An equally tone-deaf producer chimed in about how Williams is more popular than Swavy on Instagram. The strange commentary went on for over a minute before Williams finally mentioned who Swavy was and that he'd been murdered. To add to an already cringe-worthy display, she seemed confused about the details and repeatedly asked the producer to confirm that Swavey was the victim. Outraged viewers accused Williams of being classless, demeaning, and disrespectful to the deceased young star. Swavey's mother was also deeply offended. In an interview with CBS 3, she summed her thoughts up into a simple but poignant statement, wondering out loud, "As a mother, Wendy Williams, how dare you?" Swavey's killer remained at large for 5 months before authorities finally announced the arrest of 18-year-old Israel Lecomte, who was accused of killing both Swavey and another victim named Quinton Dorsey. In early 2022, Lecomte was indicted on 12 federal charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder and 4 felony gun counts. The case appears to be ongoing. 5. Carla Pardini. In a chilling scenario that sounds like it came straight out of a Scream movie, a popular 21-year-old TikToker named Carla Pardini received a mysterious call around 10:30 p.m. one night in September 2022. She followed the caller's instructions to step outside her house in Mexico's Sinaloa state and never returned home. Authorities found the young woman's lifeless, bullet-riddled body at a nearby intersection the next day. Based on the evidence, it was clear that Pardini was lured outside and ambushed. Several witnesses reported seeing armed individuals lurking in the area prior to the attack, but nobody was able to identify the suspects. Shortly after the murder, authorities said that they were treating the case as a femicide, which is defined as the intentional killing of women or girls because they are female. In a statement, police told the public that they were carrying out the investigation in utmost secrecy to prevent any possible suspects from being alerted ahead of an arrest. The person or people responsible for the gender-motivated hate crime remain at large. In keeping with their vow to investigate in secrecy, authorities have released few details about their progress towards solving the case, leaving it unclear whether they're close to making any arrests. Pardini had a 90,000-strong TikTok following before her death, and her fanbase only grew in the days and weeks following her murder. In her last 3 videos, she posted captions in Spanish that translate to, "When they tell I can't stand you," and, in short, "I hope you don't like me." Some people have raised the possibility that the cryptic messages were directed at someone who was bothering Pardini, but investigators didn't say whether they thought there was a connection between the videos and the social media star's death. 4. Travis Honcho Taylor. Also known as Taco and Honcho da Boss, 39-year-old Travis Honcho Taylor was an up-and-coming TikTok star from Columbia, South Carolina. In addition to the more than 280,000 followers he attracted through his online persona, he was well-liked in his community for his good-natured personality and unique sense of humor. In other words, to those who knew and followed him, he was an all-around good guy. Sadly, tragedy struck during the early morning hours of April 8, 2023. While responding to a report of shots fired, Richland County Sheriff's deputies found Honcho face down and unresponsive in the hallway of an apartment building with multiple gunshot wounds to his upper torso. He was pronounced dead at a local hospital. Friends, family, and fans were devastated by Honcho's sudden death at the hands of what appeared to be a senseless act of violence. 9 days later, authorities announced the arrest of suspects Daniel Goodwin Jr. and Andre Daniels, who were each charged with 1 count of murder. Investigators have released few details about the circumstances leading up to the shooting, beyond revealing that the suspects and the victim were all at the same nightclub before the murder took place. At the time of the killing, Daniel Goodwin was out on bond for his alleged role in a murder that occurred in 2019 in nearby Orangeburg County. In a statement, Richland County Sheriff Leon Lott described Goodwin's alleged participation in yet another murder as a worst-case scenario of the catch-and-release strategy of granting freedom to suspects of violent crimes. 3. Eric Dodds and Jonte Cavon Collier. 29-year-old Dakota Bradshaw's future was cut short by a fatal gunshot on August 1, 2022. Walker County Sheriff's deputies found him clinging to life inside his Rossville, Georgia home while responding to a call about shots fired. Bradshaw was rushed to the hospital, where he died from his injuries. Witnesses told law enforcement that they saw a red truck and a blue Dodge Challenger speeding away from the scene, but authorities initially had little else to go on in the way of identifying the suspects. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation joined the case and soon narrowed in on 23-year-olds Eric Dodds and Jonte Kevon Collier, who were well known on TikTok and OnlyFans for their LGBTQ+ friendly content. Collier was the first suspect to be publicly named. In response to the announcement, Dodds made a TikTok video claiming his partner was innocent. He even created a GoFundMe crowdfunding campaign to raise money for Collier's legal defense. Both men were arrested in Huntsville, Alabama, a few weeks after Bradshaw's murder. Authorities released limited details about the case until nearly 3 months later, when the suspects were formally indicted on murder charges. During the indictment hearing, GBI agent Daniel Nicholson testified that he had received information from a third person who was allegedly involved in the shooting named Daja Collins. According to Ms. Collins' version of events, the murder was motivated by a plot to retrieve the blue Dodge Challenger, which was registered in Collier's name, from Bradshaw's property where it was parked. Nicholson said that Collins told him she was tasked with driving the Challenger away from the scene. She allegedly rode to Bradshaw's home with Dodds, Collier, and others in the red truck the witnesses spotted at the scene, and she claimed that everyone was armed. During her interview with Agent Nicholson, the young woman reportedly described Dodds as being in a highly emotional state and crying with rage during the drive to Bradshaw's property. She reported hearing 4 or 5 gunshots as she rushed from the trunk to the Challenger and sped away. A fourth suspect, Darius Woods, was captured in Chattanooga, Tennessee, a few days after the indictment hearing after being on the run for more than 2 months. In a statement, GBI Special Agent Joe Montgomery described the investigation as labor and paper intensive, with more than 50 search warrants being carried out on social media, cell phones, homes, and people. According to the most recent news updates, all 4 suspects remain in custody while awaiting the next steps in their case. 2. Hardis Najafi. In September 2022, a 22-year-old Iranian woman named Mahsa Amini died under suspicious circumstances after being arrested by the country's morality police, leading to a widespread speculation that she was beaten to death by law enforcement for not wearing her hijab. The disturbing tragedy sparked Iran's biggest women's rights protest since at least 2009, if not earlier. Just 5 days after Amini's death, a 22-year-old Iranian TikToker named Hardis Najafi was killed in an onslaught of bullets while participating in a protest in the city of Karaj. According to reports, she was shot at least 6 times in the face, hand, neck, heart, and torso. Her family said that she was struck by more than 20 bullets. Iranian authorities blamed the murder on protesters, claiming that Najafi was shot with weapons that are not used by police. But other activists, as well as Najafi's family, strongly refuted this claim, arguing that the young woman was murdered by the country's security forces. To add to the suspicion, Najafi's loved ones said that they were not allowed to see her in the hospital, and that police officers physically barred them from going near her. Shortly after Najafi's death, a video circulated online of a young woman tying her hair into a ponytail before joining a protest. Social media rumors falsely claimed that the woman in the video was Najafi, when it actually featured another brave young activist. But Najafi was also an avid social media user who had a solid TikTok following, and both women protested for a shared vision of a peaceful country where women have basic rights. Najafi's death only further fueled the demonstrations against the government, which are ongoing. Sadly, more protesters have died under suspicious circumstances, and their funerals have become ridden with violence at state hands. In at least 3 cases analyzed by the Washington Post, footage, photos, and eyewitness accounts have produced clear evidence of Iranian security forces using lethal force against funeral attendees. As the death count continues to accumulate, the masses continue to bravely defy the authorities, including by using TikTok and other social media to raise awareness and gain support in their fight against state-sponsored repression. 1. Sonali Phogat. As a career actress and politician from India's Haryana state, Sonali Phogat was used to talking in front of an audience before she became a TikToker, so it was only natural that she extended her influence to social media. When the 42-year-old died after being found unresponsive in her hotel room during a trip to Goa in August of 2022, it initially appeared to be the result of cardiac arrest. But an autopsy report found multiple blunt force injuries on her body, and her death was ruled a suspected homicide. As a fearlessly opinionated and outspoken woman with a successful high-paying career, it was certainly possible from multiple angles that someone wanted Phogat dead. Authorities were now tasked with figuring out whether the motive had any connection to her leadership roles in 2 of India's political parties, if perhaps a disgruntled social media follower had targeted her, or if the crime was rooted closer to home. The investigation yielded surveillance footage of Phogat in the company of her personal assistant, Sudhir Sangwan, at a local beach bar the night before her death. In the video, Sangwan could be seen pouring a drink down Phogat's throat. Shortly thereafter, she appeared unsteady on her feet and was visibly struggling to walk on her own. Further evidence suggested that Sangwan drugged his boss with a heavy dose of MDMA, which caused her to spend 2 hours throwing up in the bathroom of a nightclub after leaving the beach bar. After the club closed at around 4:30 in the morning, witnesses reportedly observed Phogat being carried by Sangwan and an alleged accomplice, who was later identified as Sukhwinder Vasi. The men were seen taking Phogat to the resort where she was staying, just a few hours before she was taken to the hospital and declared dead on arrival. According to investigators from India's Central Bureau of Investigation, who took over the case at the request of Phogat's family after local authorities failed to produce answers regarding her death, the suspects allegedly overdosed Phogat as part of a sinister plot to get their hands on her money and property. Sangwan and Wasi face murder charges, and 3 other suspects have been charged in connection with Phogat's death, including the owner of the beach bar she was seen at with Sangwan and the caretaker at the resort where she was staying. The wheels of justice turn notoriously slowly in India, which is infamous for having one of the world's most snail-paced legal systems. It'll give the suspects a lot of time to think about their alleged crimes as they languish with an uncertain future and the very real possibility of a prison sentence looming over their heads. Thanks for watching. As you already know, fame often comes with money, not to mention admiration, but sometimes it attracts the wrong kind of attention. Would you rather be famous and wealthy, even if it meant having to deal with crazy people and being extra vigilant about your safety? Or would you prefer a modest but drama-free existence, where people you don't want to interact with generally leave you alone? Why would one be better than the other? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.